Welcome to the Excess Soil Registry training session for project area notice filings. We're really pleased that you guys are interested in knowing more about the registry that we have been building throughout this year. And I'll just get us started with an introduction of what to expect today, and then a few house rules to get us going. So today you get a little bit of an introduction on us, RPRA, and then our lovely Pam will give some expectation setting about what to expect from the session. Then you get an overview from John from PwC, who've been helping us build the registry, and he will also give you a demonstration of how to make a project area filing. Pam will then share some more information about more training that we have coming up. There will be a little bit of Q&A for about 15 minutes. We hope maybe more, depending on how long it takes us to go through everything. And then we will just take a little bit of feedback from you about how you found today's session. So just a few house rules before we start. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen there. Please use that to ask any questions. Within the Q&A, there will be the opportunity to upvote. Because we might have limited amount of time to get to all your questions, I advise that you use that functionality for any questions that you would like answered live. We will do our best to answer all questions today. If we can't, we will try to answer any questions that we can't get to live in writing, and we will share that by email to everybody who has signed up for one of these sessions. This session is being recorded, and the recording of the session alongside with the presentations will be made available on our website, and that information we will share at the end of this presentation as well. So I think that is it for me for housekeeping rules. So without further ado, I will pass you on to Pam.
Thanks, Isabella. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pam Castillo, and I'm the Compliance Manager of Registry Support here at RPRA. We hosted our first training session last week, where we talked a little bit more in detail about who RPRA is. That session provided an introduction to the Excess Soils program, including how to create an account and access the public portal. So we invite you to watch that recording. It's available on our website, along with the other additional training materials that Isabella mentioned. But for the benefit of everyone attending today, I will provide a brief overview of who we are. So RPRA is mandated by the Government of Ontario to provide digital reporting services for a wide range of waste and resource recovery programs. We have already successfully built 4 registries under the RRCEA Act. This includes tires, batteries, ITTAV, and lighting. And that's helping to drive Ontario's growing circular economy forward. Earlier this year, we were directed by the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks to establish and operate the registry, a new registry to enable regulated persons to comply with registration and notice filing requirements outlined in the Excess Soil Regulation that takes effect on January 1st, 2022. We're very excited to launch the registry tomorrow, which will give the regulated community a full month access to the system before the regulation comes effect again on January 1st. So through collaboration with industry stakeholders and the ministry, we hope that you find that the registry is efficient and user-friendly. I will outline that RPRA is responsible for establishing and maintaining the registry. Again, where required notices are to be filed as directed by the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks. However, the responsibility for policy and programs related to the excess soil regulation will continue to be conducted by the ministry. So that includes the compliance and enforcement activities that will be conducted by the ministry. And overall, we look forward to continuing to support the ministry with its compliance enforcement by maintaining the registry after it goes live tomorrow. And we hope to provide you with ongoing support through our registry support team effective tomorrow. So Isabella, if we can move over to the next slide, or John, sorry. So brief overview again of what the registry is. Essentially, it's an online digital reporting solution for regulated parties to register and report information, and also to provide payments to RPRA, as we are a cost recovery organization. The type of information that's collected in the registry includes information about a business entity itself, including the name, the address, and contact info. So this includes a private entity, could also include a municipality, and the type of information traditionally that is input into the registry is based on supply chain information for our RCA programs. And it's a little bit different for the Excess Soil program, as we will be accepting information as it relates to filing notice requirements. And another caveat to this is that we do protect the information and privacy that is within the registry. So that's always been top of mind when we've created the platform along with our technical vendors. So that's a little bit of an overview about the registry. I will hand it over to John Conway, who is supporting us on this training session. And again, we will do a deeper dive into the project area notice filing. And as Isabella said later, we will have a period for Q&As. Over to you, John.
Great, thank you very much, Pam. So yes, as Pam mentioned, my name is John Conway. I am a functional specialist here with PwC Canada and our front office transformation team. So before I go too far in, as I did want to say, I will turn my camera off because my laptop seems to have an issue with having a camera on and sharing a couple of screens at the same time, but I am here and I will walk through all of the slides and the demonstration. So look, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you all to the Excess Soil Registry this afternoon and to run through our second of 3 training sessions. This particular session, as Pam said, is dedicated to the project area notice filing type. So before we actually start and I go on to the next slide, I also want to point out that as each of these training sessions are designed to be standalone, for any of you who attended or viewed the recording of the last training session, there may be some overlaps of some of the common materials or even some of the concepts within the registry itself. So to set a few expectations for these sessions, we will be showcasing today the technical features of the registry, and we will go through the functionality that has been built. However, we will not be going into the legal requirements of the regulation itself, nor its interpretation or its enforcement. So how I'm going to do that is I will do a brief overview of the topics by using this slide deck, and then we will do a live demonstration as well. So as Isabella said, we have allocated 50 minutes for that Q&A session, but of course, RPRA is available to answer any other questions that you may have as well. Then coming up as part of our next steps, there is a future webinar session for a deep dive into the reuse filing notice. And we will also be recording a training video for navigating an RDSD filing as well. So in today's session, we'll do that deep dive into the project area notice. So I will show us how to initiate the filing from the registry homepage. I'll explain how you can share the filing with a third party if you so choose to. And then I'll walk through the entire notice filing itself from start to finish. I will make an initial submission of the filing, and then I'll return to update it, and then I will make a final submission as well. Then finally, I will show you how you can download PDF summaries of your filing and the invoices that are generated after selecting a payment method. For the benefit of those of you who may have missed or not seen that last training session, I just want to provide a very brief overview of the Excess Soil Registry. So for the Excess Soil program specifically, there are 3 portals that make up the registry. The first is the registry for industry users. So this is where our industry users can log in with an account detail to complete an excess soil filing and meet their compliance requirements. So this is what I'm going to demonstrate today. Secondly, we have the public soils registry. This is where certain details which are associated with the registry filings will be shared for public access. The public does have the ability to access this portal without any login or any registration required. And then finally, the third portal is the Ministry Portal. So all of the information included in excess soil notice filings is shared with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks in order for them to manage their compliance and policy efforts. The only pieces which are restricted from that is any financial or payment information. So in order to make the filing today, I will be representing an industry user and I will be utilizing this registry portal. Industry users can log in, or they can create an account by accessing registry from the link here, registry.rpra.ca, and then clicking through to the excess soil program. So how to create the account and then access the program, all of this was covered in our last session, so I won't be covering that part again. However, I have provided a link to that particular session at the end of this presentation, and so those training materials can also be accessed from the RPRA website after this call. Now, there are three types of filings that can be completed via the registry portal. Of course, today, as I said, we are going to focus on a project area filing specifically. And as written here, the project area refers to a single property or adjoining properties on which a project is carried out. That project being any that involves the excavation of soil for any form of development or site alteration, construction, or removal of liquid soil or sediment from a surface water body. Now, this slide explains the life cycle that each of these filing types go through. When the filing is first initiated, it should be considered to be in progress. And another way to think of this is as your draft filing. At this in progress stage, the filing could be incomplete, so it will not be visible on the public portal and no fees are required. Important to note is the filing data is visible to MECP on the Ministry portal at all of the statuses, including this stage at in progress before a submission has been made. The filing will remain at this in progress stage until it is submitted. And a filing can't actually be submitted until all of the required data has been entered, a complete declaration document has been uploaded, and payment has been arranged for any applicable fees. So at this point, that the filing will change from initial submission, from in progress to initial submission. Filings with this initial submission status become immediately visible on the public portal. Should a user come back to initial submission and make any changes to any of the data within the filing, then the submission status will change to updated submission to reflect that a change was made. And this is actually an important step in keeping the data up to date, and there's no fee in order to update a notice filing at this stage. The updated data will be reflected immediately on the filing that is visible for both public and Ministry portals. And then in order to progress from an initial submission or an updated submission to a final submission, all of the required information for the filing must be entered. So that includes a signed final submission declaration and a final fee payment, if that's applicable, and that all must be arranged for. Once that final submission has been made, the data can no longer be updated, and all of the information on the filing, except, as I said, for payment information, will be visible on both the public and the Ministry portals. Just a quick note on fees at this point. The fees that you'll see as I walk through the filing live are there for demonstration purposes only, and they're to show the functionality of the submission process. So this slide is an introduction to our filing context. Each type of filing requires the details for different types of contacts. As you can see, the list of contacts for a project area filing is actually quite extensive. There are 7 types of contacts that are associated with a project area filing. Of those 7 types, the filing can either be initiated by a project leader or by an authorized person. As you can see here, a project leader is defined as the person or the persons who are ultimately responsible for making decisions relating to the planning and implementation of the project. Their contact details are required for every filing. An authorized person is defined as a person authorized by the owner, operator, or project leader to file the notice on their behalf. So their contact details are not required if the filing was initiated by a project leader. However, should the person who initiates that filing be an authorized person, then their contact information is going to be required. Then the contact details of an operator, person responsible for transportation, and a site contact, all is defined here, are all required for a project area filing. Then optionally, you can add in the contact details of multiple qualified persons who develop the site-specific excess soil quality standards for the project area. And then there's also another option to add in the details of any peer reviewer who conducted the peer review or certification process for any of the actions as required under the regulation. So now we'll look specifically at the journey that we will go on in order to complete a project area notice filing. Our first step when initiating filing is to go through the pre-screening questions in order to determine our eligibility or our requirement to actually make that notice filing. Next, we move on to selecting the role that we are going to play in the project area. The regulation requires, and as I just stated,
Sorry, John. Somebody just asked you to repeat the point you made about project leader versus authorized person's contact details.
Sorry, yeah, let me jump back to this one. About the contact details here?
Yeah.
Okay, so for a project leader, the details are required when making that filing. For an authorized person, the contact details aren't actually required unless they are the one who are initiating the filing. So I will actually show that as part of the demonstration. That might be easier to show. I'll go through that step in the demonstration. It'll give it a little more context, I think. Okay, so if I jump back to here, so we have this optional step of assigning notice access to another company in order to complete the filing of our behalf. We then get into the details of the project area as defined by the regulations. So we start by entering in the contact details for each contact that is required to be listed. We'll go into details about the project, including its location, qualified persons, and applicable peer review or certification information, before we move on to entering details about the soil coming from the project area, then details about the destination site that the soil is actually headed for. And that's all these three sections here. Once all of that part has been entered, we can review our full filing before moving forwards to making that initial submission. And then the initial submission, that's made by paying an initial fee if it's applicable, or simply by clicking on the submit button if there is no fee required. Then when the project is completed, we're required to return to the registry to make a final submission. At that stage, we confirm the final amounts of the excess soil per destination site and the date that the last load was removed from the project. We can make the final submission by paying a final fee if it's applicable, or again, simply by clicking on the submit button if no fee is required. So because this presentation as a whole, this is going to be available as a referenceable material, this slide is going into a bit more detail as to what's required in each of these sections. I'll cover it fairly quickly because I will be demonstrating each of these points during the live demonstration as well. So within a filing, you will see chevrons like these that are used to mark out each section of requirements. The chevrons are also a handy reference as you progress through the filing and can be used for general navigation too. So for example, should you need to return to edit the details of the operator who's associated with the filing, you can access the contact details section, and you can access that directly from the review or a summary page. So our last slide before we actually jump into the demonstration itself is we have constructed a scenario that we'll be playing out today. So in this scenario, the project consists of a new maintenance facility to be built adjacent to an existing transit storage facility and parking lot. The facility will be separated into two distinct parts: the transit administrative office and dispatch center, and the storage and maintenance garage. The new facility features parking to accommodate 300 cars and a delivery dock, and is equipped with an emergency diesel generator and electrical transformers. So SolveJet is our project leader, and they're working alongside general contractor Per Construction as the operator of the site itself. We'll then also be entering the details of Kevin Smith as our contact on site, and then Heather Hill as our qualified person who developed the site-specific excess soil quality standards for the project area. And as the operator on site, Per Construction anticipates that the excavation will generate 7,000 cubic meters of surplus soil requiring removal from the project area. Okay, so now that we've set the scene for the filing, I will open up one other page and then we will jump into the registry homepage.
Just sorry, very quickly. Jeffrey, I see you have your hand raised. Just a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. We can't use that function to let you speak, so please type your questions in the Q&A. Thank you. Sorry, John, carry on.
Yeah, no worries, thank you. Okay, so we're starting on the Excess Soil Registry homepage, and as you can see, I'm logged into my account here as Diane Bennett, and my company Solvejet is indicated here on the top left. So on this page, you'll be able to see a list of filings that you've created and any filings that were shared with you as well. By default, the filings are arranged by the notice ID, but you can also click on any of the column headings to sort your list of filings. For example, if I wanted to sort by last updated on. Those filings that have been shared with another company or shared with you by another company will have a check mark in this shared access column, like so. And then the actions that are actually available to you will depend on the status of that submission. So those filings that are in progress will show continue as an action. Those filings that are at an initial submission will show update or finalize. And then those that are at a final submission can no longer be edited. So the only action that's available at this point is to view the details of a completed submission. Then in order to initiate a new notice filing, we're going to click on the Initiate New Notice button. And this will be the same process for all of our filing types. So after I click on Proceed to the prompt, we're brought to the Select Notice Filing Type. On this screen, we can select which filing type we would like to initiate. Of course, for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to click on the Project Area Notice. As I said, we will also be covering the Reuse Site Notice filing on December 2nd, and that's part of a separate session. So I selected my Project Area Notice and clicked on Next. When we start any of our notice filings, we're met with one or several pre-screening questions, and that depends on the filing type that's selected. The pre-screening questions are designed to ensure that we meet the criteria or the eligibility in order to initiate the filing. For that project area notice filing specifically, we're advised to review the filing requirements by clicking through to the RPRA webpage. Then once I'm comfortable with the filing requirements, I can indicate my intention to proceed by clicking on Yes, and certifying that that information is true and correct. The next part of initiating project area notice is to select our role. The project area notice filing can only be initiated by a project leader or by an authorized person. Throughout the filing, you may see these I information icons. These icons give you a little more help or context to the field or question that you may be on. And you can click on this for some extra information. So as you can see from this informational pop-up, and as we've gone over in our slides, the authorized person is someone who has been authorized by the project leader, owner, or operator of a site to complete that notice and pay fees on their behalf. So I cannot actually proceed with this until I've made a selection. You'll see that the next button on the bottom right has been grayed out. So I need to select one role for myself. I can only select one role. So if I select my role already as project leader, and then I select an authorized person, the project leader selection has been unselected. If I have selected that I am an authorized person, I must also check that I certify that I am filing on behalf of the project leader and that I am taking responsibility for those fee payments. But if you remember from that scenario in the presentation deck, Diane is a project leader for the transit facility excavation. So I will select my role as a project leader and then click on Next. At this point, we have initiated our notice. So this means that we're provided with a notice ID, and that can be found at the top right-hand side. As we progress at this point on, our progress will be saved as we proceed throughout the filing. So for any reason, if we leave the filing, we can return to this specific filing by looking for the notice ID on the dashboard. We can return to the dashboard at any point by clicking on the Back to Dashboard button on the top left-hand corner. You will also notice that there are 5 chevrons at the top of the page. Each of these chevrons is representing a section of the filing and is also showing our progress so far. This particular section is called the Notice Access section. So going through the nuances of the notice access, this was covered in our last training session. But as a brief reminder for everyone, by clicking on the Manage Notice Access, I can choose to provide access to all of the registered users at another company in order to edit or to complete most of this filing on my behalf. All I need to do is click on the Add Company, search for the company that I would like to provide access to. I think I want to use Bob Soil. And then select my contact person at this company. Check that they have access to the filing, acknowledge, and press save. Now that the company has been provided with notice access, now their details are listed on this notice access page. And if I hover over the view link, you'll see a brief summary of the company I've provided access to and details of the contact that I have assigned. So all of this is actually an optional step. None of this is actually required to assign notice access. None of this assigning of notice access is actually required in order to progress through the filing. And then I should say as another reminder that a company that you provide notice access to, they will be able to complete most parts of the filing, but they cannot, there's a few things that they cannot do. They cannot access the notice access page. They cannot actually make any submissions, and they cannot view any fee payments or financial information. Should I want to revoke somebody's access, I can click on the Manage Notice Access button, uncheck the access to this filing, acknowledge once more, and click on Save. And now you can see that no companies have been provided access to this notice. So again, because this is an optional step, I can proceed by clicking Save and Next without having any information on this particular page. So we're now on the second chevron. This is our contact details chevron. So as we said, the regulation requires the details of at least 4 types of contacts associated with a project area filing. Those 4, as a reminder, are project leader, the operator, the person responsible for transportation, and the site contact. Now, each of those contacts, they could be the same person, or they could be a combination of the same person and new individuals. And then this is where we can also add in the details of a 5th contact type, which is our authorized person. So entering in the details of that authorized person, that is an optional step, except when the person who has initiated the filing has indicated that they are the authorized person. So if you initiate that your role is as an authorized person, then we will require you to add your details. And I will point out that page when I get to that page too. So on the first page of the contact details, we're actually asked to enter in the details of the project leader. But because I had selected my role already as the project leader on the role selection screen, my details have been pre-filled in here for me. I still have the ability to go in and edit any of the information. For example, if I wanted to update my phone number or an email address, I can change this information on this page here. I also just want to draw your attention to this checkbox here. The project leader is also the contact for this site. If this box is checked on this page or any of the following contact pages, then I will not be asked to re-enter the details for a site contact at a later stage. So I will leave it unchecked for the purposes of now so you can see the site contact page, and then we'll come back to this. So once I'm happy with the details that are on the project leader page, I can click on Save and Next. And then our second page, it looks very similar, but this page is asking for the contact information of the operator of the site. Now, this is my first opportunity to show what happens if you try and move forwards with a page on the registry without entering all of the required information. So if I click on Save and Next, you will see the missing fields are highlighted in red, and then the validation error is written below it in red text as well. So I'll enter in here the details of our site operator, who is Thomas Ford, and he's from Per Construction. For street address, I'll use 424 Front Street in Brampton. Okay, so once more, once I'm happy with the details on that page, I can click Save and Next. Okay, so again, we're talking about the authorized person at this point. So this third page, this asks for the details of the authorized person. It is optional to add in the details of the authorized person. Again, unless you had indicated that your role when you initiated the filing was that of an authorized person. And if that case, this page would actually be required for one, and it would also be pre-filled with all of your information in the same way as how the project leader's details were pre-filled on the previous page. So as I selected my role as the project leader, not the authorized person, I have the option of adding the details of an authorized person here. I can do that by clicking on the yes button, and you can see all of the information, all of the required fields that are needed in order to proceed. However, if I click no to this, then I do not need to add in any further information, and I can click save and next. So for the scenario we have built today, we do not require to add the details of an authorized person. So again, a very similar page to what we've seen before. Here I must add in the contact details for the person who is ultimately responsible for transportation. So we were using Per Construction and Thomas Ford again for our person responsible for transportation. So I will write his details in here. Remember, good postal code L9R. There we go, 4R4. So once more, I'm going to click on save and next. So this final page is asking for the site contact information. It's asking for this information because I did not check that site contact box on any of the previous contact pages. So if I had selected that checkbox, this page would not show at all. And the other contact roles details, they would be the one that would be registered as a site contact as well. However, for our scenario, we have a different site contact. We have Kevin Smith from PM Inc. So I will throw in Kevin's details. Okay, and once more, I'm happy with the information on that page. I can click on save and next. The final page that we have under the contact details section is another optional page. So I can pass this page without having any information in this table. However, this page gives me the ability to add in additional project leaders or operators if so required. In order to add these additional contacts to a filing, I can click on the Add Additional Contacts button, which will open this pop-up for me. And then as you can see, I can select which type of additional contact I'm choosing to add to the filing. I can choose to add an additional project leader. I can choose to add an additional operator, or I can choose to add somebody who is in both roles. So I will use an example again. And then I click on this add button at the bottom right. So you'll see that the details have been added to this table here now, and their role as both an additional operator and an additional project leader has been indicated. Now, as sometimes the details that are entered are longer than the space on the table, you can hover over a row to see the full details of the entered data. You'll also see that I have two options in the action column available to me, either to update or remove. I can choose to update or change any of the details associated with this contact by clicking on the update button. For example, if I realized that I had put in an incorrect email address, and I can click save, and then that information has been updated. Or alternatively, I can click remove to remove the contact from the filing entirely. And we're back to no results in our additional contacts table. So again, because this is an optional step, I don't require any additional contacts listed. So I can click Save and Next to move on to the next page. So chevrons have been updated once more. We're now on the project details section of the filing. The project details page, this is where we can gather all of the required information about the project area itself. So the first part of the page up at the top here, this gathers details about the project area. And then the second part of this page gathers details about the physical property locations that are actually present within the project area. And then all of the fields are required on this page. So if I try and click Save and Next, you'll see which fields are required and that at least one location must be entered into this table. So we begin by selecting our project type from this table up here. You can select multiple types by selecting it from your list here and clicking on the right arrow. Should I wish to remove one from the selected table, I can select it and click on the left arrow to remove that option. Each of our project area filings, they also need a project name, which we can enter here. And then we also need to add in a description of the project and a description of the location of the project area. I do have some pre-prepared data that I can put in here from our scenario. Also like to point out at this point that when you see a paragraph field like this, our character limit is 255 characters into something like this. So in theory, you should probably have another sentence or two's worth of space in a field like this. So it's definitely not a huge essay that we're inputting in here. And I can put in a description of the location. Okay. So once that information above has been entered, we come to the second part of this page, and this is where we can add in the property locations which are associated with the project area. Now, our understanding is that there may be multiple properties or endpoints located within a project area. So this table, very similar to the additional contacts table, it allows us to enter, update, or remove multiple properties. In order to add a new property location, we click on the Add New Property or Endpoint button here. And here we are asked to select our property type. A property could either be a non-linear property, in which case we can just edit the details for one particular location. Or should the property be linear in nature, such as a road, then we can add in each of the endpoints of the property. So we'll start off by adding in an endpoint. Once more, I'll show if I click on the Add button without adding all the required information, I'm prompted and I can see which are our required fields. You'll also see this primary property checkbox here. So for every filing where multiple properties can be added, we require at least one of those properties to be considered as the primary property. And then by default, the first property that you add is going to be considered to be the primary property. And again, I do have some pre-prepared data that I can put in here as well. So I select my community, throw in a description. And then I also need to add in the geographic coordinates. So a quick note about the latitude and longitude. If you do not yet know or have a record of the latitude or longitude of a property, then you can use Google Maps to get the information. So I just have Mississauga open here. If you right click, you see that the geographical coordinates are generated for you at the top. If you click on this once, that information is saved to your clipboard, and then you have the information you can reference here. That's just in case you do not know the latitude and longitude. So once I've entered all of that information, I can click on Add, and you'll see that it's updated the table here with that particular entry. And then I have those options again on the right-hand side to update or remove the property. So I can click on Update, change any of the information, say something like that. Or should I wish to remove the property from the filing entirely, I can click on the Remove button. So I will add another endpoint for my linear property. We're going through the same process again, adding my endpoint, selecting Mississauga, throw my description in here. So on this one, you will see that the primary property checkbox is unchecked by default because we've already selected that primary property on that last property location. However, should I wish to update my filing to indicate that this is my primary property, I can check this box in the pop-up, and this will remove the primary property status from the other property location. So I'll throw in my latitude and longitude, and click on Add once more. So you can see that the primary checkbox has changed from the point up here to the property down below. Now for our last example, I'll show how you can add a non-linear property location to your filing. So once more, click on the Add New Property or Endpoint button, and I will select non-linear property. If I scroll down and click on Add, see that this page is fairly similar for the linear property, except that in addition to the geographical coordinates down here, we also require a complete municipal address or the legal description in order to proceed. The legal description as defined here could include any applicable PINs, encumbrances, easements, or any other location references. So I will enter in some data here, and I'll assume that I know the legal description, but not actually the address. So I'll put in my property description. I won't change my primary property. Let's assume I do not know my municipal address, but I know a legal description and I have a PIN available. So I can paste that information in here. And then once more, I can add in my geographical coordinates. Like so. So once all of this information has been added, I click on Add once more, and this will update the table for us. Oh, maybe I missed something here. Anyway, that information would be added onto our table here as well. So then once I'm happy with all of the property locations that have been added, I can click on Save and Next. And then the next page under project details is asking about the details of a qualified person. So I'm being asked if a qualified person was retained to prepare or oversee the preparation of documents required under the regulation. Again, the default answer for this is no, but if I select my answer to this question is yes, I select the yes button, and then I'll see the table below that will allow me to add multiple qualified persons to my filing, same way as it looked with the additional context. So to add a new qualified person, I'm going to click on the Add Qualified Person button. And this is where I would enter in the details of my QP, which if you remember from our scenario was Heather Hill. So I'll add in Heather's details here. And click on Add. Great. So as with those additional contacts and also the property locations, I have those options there to update or remove any of the qualified persons associated with the filing. So once again, once I'm happy with this information, I'm going to click on Save and Next. And the next question is asking if a peer review or certification process was undertaken for this particular project. So again, the default answer is no. However, should the answer to this question be yes, I would click on yes, and I can add in the details of a peer reviewer or certification process. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to click on no and move through to the filing. So now we are on the soil details section. This is our fourth section of the filing. The first page of the soil details section, it asks for an estimate of how much excess soil will be removed from the project area, broken down by any applicable table in the excess soil quality standards. So to add an estimated amount of excess soil, we click on the Add Quality Standard button on the bottom right, and then this pop-up is going to walk us through the process of selecting the applicable table. So I would select Table 2. Then my types of property use have been adjusted for that particular table. I can select Industrial, Commercial, Community, and then I enter in my estimated amount of soil in cubic meters. So I have the option to add multiple entries here, and I can indicate different amounts of excess soil which are associated with each of those different tables. If I do this once more, I also have an option here to select that I do not wish to add a sample a table where sampling is not required, sorry. So I can click on this button here. Then under types of property use, I can select not applicable. And once more, I can add in my estimated amount of soil. Just point out at the bottom right of this table, the total amounts of the excess soil that are added are showed, and that is adding up all of the individual tables which have been selected. So once I've added in my total estimated amount of excess soil, then I can click Save and Next and progress once more. So this next page of the soil details section, this is asking for a list of all of the substances or other materials that are in the excess soil for the purposes of excavation, dewatering, or solidification. So I can click on the Add a Substance, and very similar to our quality standards table selection again, we have multiple drop-down menus to click through. So if I was to select the solidification or dewatering, I would select an applicable category and write in the name of a substance here. The same options exist here on the right-hand side to update or remove my entries. And then once I'm done adding in my substances that may be present in the soil, I can click on Save and Next. Okay. So for the purposes of making an initial submission, the user will be expected to add in the estimated amount of excess soil that is going to each destination site. So at this point, it's actually easier if I return back to the presentation. I'll just go over a few features about adding those destination sites, and then I'll come back to this page on the registry itself. So I'll come back to here. Okay, so the page we left on is essentially this page on the left-hand side here. So the information that's going to be required on these destination sites page, that's actually going to depend on the submission status of the filing. For the purposes of making that initial submission, we are required to add in an estimated amount of excess soil, which is going to a destination site. Then, and only once the last load has been removed from the project area, and in order to make the final submission, we will need to go back in to update the final, and then we will disclose the actual final amount of excess soil that went to each destination site that was originally listed. So on the left here, we refer to this as our destination site wizard or our destination site summary. Then as we add new destination sites in the course of making our initial filing, they will be added onto the summary table. There are going to be different requirements for each of the site types that are added as a destination site, and I will cover those on the next slide. Then on the right-hand side, this is a screenshot of the list of destination sites and the estimated amount of excess soil being added to a filing summary page, which we'll get onto shortly. When making that final submission, we can simply update the final amount of excess soil column directly from the summary page rather than having to jump back and forth into the soil details section of the filing. So as I just mentioned, there are different types of destination sites that can be added to a project area filing. These are the 6 types listed here. I won't go through all of them individually, and they're listed with their respective definitions. On the next slide, though, I will actually go through the implications of adding each one of these. So for each of those 6 destination site types, the regulation actually sets out different data collection requirements. For all of our destination site types, we are required to input the estimated soil amount if it is an initial submission, then a final soil amount for a final collection, and then also the site location information. For a Class 2 soil management destination site, we're also required to input the operator contact information. And for a reuse destination site, we must also enter in the site details, property use, and excess soil quality standard information. So I will show in our demonstration how the wizard guides you through the collection of the right data for each of these destination types. In the yellow and the green column, we are indicating here how a destination site may be attached to the filing. So when a destination site is a Class 1 soil management site, a Class 2 soil management site, landfill or dump, or a local waste transfer facility, it can only be attached to the project area filing manually. But when the destination site is an RDSD site, the opposite is true. So the only way to add in an RDSD as a destination site is to search for a site that already exists in the excess soil program and is operational. an RDSD destination site that cannot be entered in manually. So if it does not exist in the registry, then we would recommend that you contact the owner or the operator of the site and encourage them to enter their site into the registry directly. The reused destination sites, they should be searched for in the registry first, as we might do for an RDSD. And then only if the reused site is not available should it be manually created. So by searching for that reused site, instead of creating it manually, there's just a couple of clicks to import all of that accurate information. And it's kind of a complex piece, which I can show in a second. So now that we've run through the theory of the destination sites, we can jump back into the registry itself and show this in practice. Okay, so here we are, we're back on our destination site wizard page. If I click Save and Next, you'll see that at least one destination site must be added in order to proceed. And then as you've seen before, we're using a dynamic table here to allow our users to be able to add, update, or remove multiple destination sites. So this page with the table, it's really a summary of all of the destination site data. So when you add or you update a new destination site, you will be returned back to this page. In order to begin with the adding of a destination site, we select the site type from the drop-down menu, at the bottom of the page here. So as discussed earlier, there are 6 different site types that can be selected, and each of those have slightly different data collection requirements. And then for the purposes of this particular demonstration, I'll showcase 4 different types of sites. So the first site type is a Class 1 soil management site. So once I've selected it from the dropdown, I just click on Add to be walked through the process. For the Class 1 soil site, the details that I need to enter are listed here. So really I need to enter in the site name, the site address, and then the estimated amount of excess soil. So I can add that information in here. Then down here, I will add in the estimated amount of excess soil, which is going to this specific destination site. I'll click Save and Next. So as you can see, this Class 1 soil management site has been added to my table, and the total estimated amount of excess soil is listed here and summarized over here as well. So once more, I have the ability to click on Update or Remove. If I click on Update, we'll take him back to that same page, so I can change any of the information on here. Click Save and Next, and that information is updated on my summary table. So next, I'll add in an RDSD. So I selected the RDSD, and I click on Add. As you remember, when adding an RDSD as my destination site, I can only select from sites that currently exist in the registry and are currently operational. I cannot manually enter in the details of an RDSD site the same way that I just did for the Class 1. So I can select one of the RDSDs that are listed on the table, or I can search for a site by using the search box here. If the RDSD that I'm looking for, if it does not show in this table, or if I've made a search and it still doesn't show, then I should contact the owner or operator and encourage them to register their site in the registry. The search terms that I can use to search for an existing site are site name, company, legal description, or an address. So for the purposes of this demonstration, if I know that my site is in Pickering, I can search for the word Pickering, and you can see that my results have updated here. So I find the correct site and I click on Add. All of the required site information when adding that RDSD as a destination site, that exists on this page already. But I still need to enter in the estimated amount of excess soil for this specific destination. So I'll throw in another 1,000 cubic meters for this destination. I click Save and Next when I'm happy with this. And then once again, you can see that this entry has been added to my table, and I can update or remove that entry individually. The final site type that I'd like to add in is a reuse site. So I select the reuse site, search and add. The important distinction to make when adding the reuse site is that only should I not be able to find my destination reuse site by searching for it, then would I have an option to manually create it instead. So we would encourage you to search for the reuse site first before trying to create it manually. It does help ensure the accuracy of the information. And as you will see in a second, the process is just much simpler when adding it from a search. So for the first example, I'll walk through adding a reuse site by search, and then I will show one being created manually. In order to add the reuse site from search, I start by searching for the site by using one of these fields. So let's say I knew that my site was in Markham. I could search for the word Markham. I can see a list of all of those reuse sites with that address, and then I can add it by clicking on add. So we actually haven't gone through making a reuse notice filing yet. That's going to come up on December 2nd. However, what I can say here is that this page is pulling details from a reuse site that is already in the registry. And as you can see, we have the site details, and a little further down, we have the soil details from that reuse site. The values on this page, though, they're read-only, so they cannot be edited because they are from an existing filing. And I still do need to add in the estimated amount of excess soil, which is going to this particular site. So I will add in another 1,000 cubic meters here. So now you can see that that reuse site has been added to this table as well. So finally, we'll add in a reuse site manually with the assumption that we couldn't actually find it within the reuse site search. So I'll click on here. Let's say that I wanted to find a site that was in Hamilton. I search for it. There are no results. There are no reuse sites available in Hamilton. So if it's not available, I can click on this add a new reuse site button. So as with when we added the site from search, there are specific details that are going to be added when adding a reuse site. And this is covered over 3 pages. The first page, we're asked for details about the site details. Then we are going to be asked for the soil details on the second page. And then finally, on the third page, we'll add in the estimated amount of excess soil, which is destined for this particular reuse site. So on the first page of the site details, I'll enter in some information. Let's call this one Hamilton reuse site. Type of undertaking I can select from the list. Check my property uses. And then select my location and a property description. As you can see once more, I must enter a street address if it's known or enter in a legal description. So as it requires either the street address or the legal description, I will just enter a municipal address. And then once more, I will add in my coordinates and paste those in here. Okay, once that information has been completed, I will click on Save and Next to move on to the next page of adding a reuse site. So this page is asking for the applicable excess soil quality standard information, and we have 3 options we can select on this page. One from excess soil quality standard tables. The second one is the site-specific excess soil quality standard with a BRAT or risk assessment. And the third one is the site-specific excess soil quality standard from site instrument. Depending on the selection that we make, we may be asked to supply further information. If we select the first option, we'll be asked to enter in the soil quality standard tables that are applicable by using this summary table. In order to add an entry, we click on the Add from Excess Soil Quality Standard. We can select an applicable volume, applicable table, and then select our type of property use. So you see when I click on Add, this adds that entry to the table. And like before, I have the option to update or remove that. In a very similar way, when I select the second option, the site-specific excess soil quality standard with BRAT or risk assessment, further down the page, you'll see that I'm asked to enter in the qualified person's details that developed the site-specific quality standard. So the functionality is very similar to what we saw before, in that we can click on Add Qualified Person, and we can enter in the details here. and click on Add. And finally, we have our third checkbox here. This actually has no follow-up actions required. Then at the bottom of the page, we have an additional information box, but this is an optional box. So once more, when I'm happy with all of the information that has been added here, I click on Save and Next. And then our final page, when adding in a reuse destination site manually, this is to add in the estimated amount of excess soil destined for that particular site. Okay. So now that I've added in those 4 destination sites with the total estimated amount of soil of 7,500 cubic meters, I can progress to the next page, the next section of the filing by clicking on Save and Next. So as you can see from the chevrons at the top, this is our review page. On the review page, you can see all of the information that has been added to your filing, and you have the option to jump back to any section to edit your inputs. By default, if your filing is still at an in progress stage, then we're brought to this page when you access the filing from your dashboard. So I can actually show this. I can show leaving the filing and then returning to the review screen. Just take a note that our notice ID number is number 46. I click on back to dashboard. And you'll see that our filing number 46 is right at the top here. I can click on the continue button to go back into that filing. And you'll see we're brought back to that review page. So once we're happy with all of the data that has been added to our filing so far, you can click on the next button, and this will take us to our summary page. So on the summary page, you can see all of the details that you've entered for your filing, and you can also follow these steps on the right-hand side in order to make a submission. Now, each section of the filing is within its own white box, and will have a green check mark at the top left to indicate that that particular section has been completed and all of the required information has been entered. So as with the review page, you can click on the edit button in order to be able to jump back to that particular section to make any changes. And then on the right-hand side, we have several new widgets that are available to us. The top widget is showing us our submission status, which currently shows in progress. And then the second widget here is showing us how we can progress our filing to an initial submission. Finally, at the bottom down here, we have a download PDF button. I should click on this. This will show the full details of all of the data that was entered into a filing, and it's all put into a PDF format so we can save or print that information should we choose. So going back to the summary page, in order to actually make the initial submission, I have to follow a few steps. And I cannot progress to making the submission until I've completed all of those required steps. So that's going to include completing all of the sections of the filing and then also uploading my initial declaration here. So I have those green check marks next to my section, so I know the filing has all of the required data that's been entered. And the next step is only to upload the signed declaration form. As I might not already have a copy of the declaration form already saved on my computer, I can click on the downloadable declaration form here. I can click and open it here. So once that form has been completed and it has been signed, then I can upload it here by selecting the file from my computer. Upload it, and you'll see that there's a confirmation message that the file has been uploaded. I can replace if I want to update a new one, remove that version, or if I want to see what I had entered, I can click on it and I can see that my information has been that I've saved already last time I uploaded it. Okay, so now that the declaration has been uploaded, you can see that the applicable fee has been generated down here. And so I can progress my filing next by selecting on a payment method. The available payment methods, if I click on select payment methods, are listed here. So bank withdrawal, credit card, EDI payment method, check, or electronic bill payment. As you select one of those options, the applicable payment instructions are going to change under the screen here. So whereas you can provide payment instructions when you choose, you can provide those payment instructions online, I should say, when choosing a bank withdrawal or when selecting a credit card. If you select one of these other 3 options, you can still submit your filing, but you will receive a follow-up email on how to submit that payment. So once we've made our payment selection, we can follow the instructions that are listed and click on Submit. Once that submission has been made, you will see a confirmation message on the right-hand side in green text here. And also the submission status has been changed to show initial submission. We'll say that the user who makes that submission and also the account admin for the user's company, so the account admin for SolveJet, they will receive a confirmation email shortly to indicate that the filing has been submitted. Further down the page on the right-hand side, you'll see confirmation of the payment amount and the payment method selected. Plus, you can download a copy of the invoice associated with the initial submission. There's a copy of the invoice there. So it's important to note at this point that because the submission is now at the initial submission stage, is that the information, as we discussed a little bit earlier on, this information is now visible to the public. Next, so our understanding is that the final submission of a notice filing may be made weeks, if not months, or maybe a year or so down the line. And so to recreate that process, I will follow the instructions, going back to the dashboard. And on the dashboard now, you will see that the status has been updated to initial submission, and my actions now are update or finalize. So I will click on update or finalize, and then brought back into this summary page. So this has happened weeks, months, or however long down the line. So what's different this time is that the submission widgets on the right-hand side, in order to make a final submission, have been updated to require some additional information. And as you can see from the prompt text here, is I have to update the final soil amounts for each of those destination sites that I added in the soil details section and enter the date of the last load removed up here. So I cannot enter in any of that final submission information until this step here is completed. So if you remember from when we were last on the submission page that every section had a green check mark, now we scroll down to the soil detail section, you'll see that this check mark is missing. And you can also see some prompt text here associated with the destination sites. So this table has been updated with another column for the total amount of excess soil. And I need to enter in the final total amount of excess soil associated with each of those destination sites. In order to do that, rather than jumping back and forth into the soil detail section, I can click on update here. So I click on update, I enter in the final amount of soil associated with that site and click on add. You'll see that information gets added onto the table. And also my total will update down here as well. So for the purposes of this demonstration, we will assume that I have estimated entirely accurately all of the soil amounts, and they match up. So now that I've entered a total amount of excess soil for each of those destination sites, you see the prompt text here is missing. The green check mark is back on my soil details. And on the top right-hand side, the prompt text here has been removed. So now I can enter the date the last load was removed from my project area. And you can see that the registry fee payment amount has been updated as well. So when I click on entering a date here and I select the date from the date selection screen, and click on save. Now you can see this next step, which is uploading the final submission declaration, becomes unlocked. So this process is going to be exactly the same as for the initial submission. Yes, we'll do the declaration first before I jump to that bit. So exactly the same as the initial submission in that I can download a blank final declaration form. Then once I have that form completed, I can click on upload, select the right file, and click on upload. Exactly the same as we saw for the initial submission. Okay. So now that the step has been completed, the final step usually in order to submit a filing is to select that payment method and pay the associated fee. So that process, again, that's exactly the same as for the initial submission. I can select that payment method and then click on submit. However, in this particular example, so based upon the entries that I put in and the amount of excess soil which was actually deposited, there's no fee owing for my final submission. And so I will see this $0 amount. Let's see this written down here, instead of the select payment method. So all I need to do to submit this filing at this point is click on the submit button. So once again, very similar to the initial submission, the submission status has updated to final submission, and an email will be sent to the filing user and the account admin for the SolveJet company. A few other key differences on this page now, though, that because every single section of our filing has been locked and has been indicated with this padlock, so no changes can now be made to those sections. The same with our date of last load removed, that cannot be edited, and our declarations cannot be removed or replaced, they can only be downloaded. I can still download copies of my invoice, I can still download a copy of the PDF. The only thing I'll point out here is there's no invoice available for that final submission because no payment amount was actually made. So that there concludes the training on the project area filing from start to finish. And so I can pass this back to Isabella, I think, for a bit of a Q&A session.
Thank you, John.
Oh, sorry,
I think we, yeah, no worries.
Back to Pam for next steps.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll actually go through this slide pretty quickly so that we can get to the Q&A. But essentially, we did have our first training session, our first training demo on November 25th. That is available on our website if you'd like to listen to the recording and access the slide deck. It talks about the account creation process, the notice access process as well, and a walkthrough of the public registry portal. Today's session is obviously being recorded, and it will be available later today on our website along with the slide deck. And then our next session is actually on Thursday, which is December 2nd, where we will be walking through, taking a deeper dive into the reuse notice filing. I said this in the previous session that the support really doesn't end here, that RPRA is committed to supporting users through learning tools and assistance in using the registry. So in addition to this to these training demos, we will be having a pre-recorded video available for a residential soil development depot. That'll likely be available in the next couple of weeks. We also have training guides where you can walk through the process of initiating and finalizing and updating the submission. That's available on our website, along with some FAQs and some important links to additional resources. And finally, the registry does officially go live on December 1st. This again gives the regulated community a month in advance before the regulation goes live. We will also be able to take questions, non-regulatory questions, as it relates to filing notices and any sort of technical support from our registry support officers. They will be available via telephone and email. You'll be able to, I think on the last slide, it does provide the email address, which is registry@rpra.ca. So any sort of questions as it relates to initiating a notice filing and troubleshooting steps, please feel free to contact our registry support officers. They will be gladly available to help answer any questions. So without saying, as we can move forward now, we can actually get through to the Q&A.
Great, thank you, Pam. So we have lots of questions coming in. Hopefully we can get through as many of them in the 15 minutes that we have. The first one, I forgot to say, if you could possibly put your name as a participant, so we know who's asking the question for our records, but also when we read out your question, we can read out your name. The first question is from anonymous attendee, and it was upvoted 8 times, so obviously lots of people want to hear about this. For larger infrastructure projects that will be ongoing for years with constant soil movement, do we need to constantly be filing, or is it a one-time filing at the end of the project?
So that's a good question. So I wouldn't say it's a one-time filing simply because of the fact that you need to initiate the filing as soon as soil is moved from the project area. And then any sort of updates along the life cycle of that project, you can make updates to that notice filing. And then once the project ends, essentially the initiator, whether it's the project leader or the authorized person, will confirm that anything that was moved from the project area within the life cycle of that project and it reached those destination sites, they will provide those final soil amounts at the end of the project. So it's, I hope that clarifies the question. So it is one notice filing for a specific project, but there's two sort of phases in that where you initiate the filing and then you finalize it once the project ends.
Okay, thank you, Pam. The next question is from Paula, and they ask, does the project leader have to give permission to an authorized person to allow them to initiate the filing of a notice? If yes, question jumped. If yes, please describe the process.
Sure. So the an authorized person can initiate a filing on behalf of a project leader, owner or operator for any of the other sort of reuse filings. But they do have to be given formal permission. So that is something that can live outside of the registry, that can be a contract. But essentially the authorized person would have to have an account with the registry and be enrolled in the Excess Soils program to be able to initiate that notice filing. So if you didn't attend our session last week, we do go through the process again of creating an account. And then the walkthrough guides as well sort of outlines those steps. So there are resources available for you to access to be able to create an account.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Next is from Ryan, and they ask if a PL project leader adds a qualified person to a notice filing, does the qualified person receive any sort of notification that they've been tagged? Is the qualified person's contact info also automatically publicly available?
Okay, so a project leader has two ways to sort of have a QP assist or notify, sorry, not assist or notify, but there are two ways in which a QP can be input into the system. So John walked through the screens in terms about the soil quality standards and if the QP was retained for those services. So if the project leader is simply indicating who the QP is on that screen within the notice filing itself, the QP does not get notified that they've been added as a QP to this notice filing. Now, if a project leader wants to give a QP notice access because the QP is closer, is somewhat closer to the project in terms of determining the soil quality standards, and they want the QP's help to help enter that data into the notice filing, then as long as the QP within an organization is given access to the notice filing, the project leader will add that person in the notice access screen, and then they can select the QP contact, and then there will be an email triggered to that QP advising them that they're given essentially access to this notice filing and make any sort of updates or changes as required. Now, is the QP's contact also publicly available? If I remember correctly, I don't think so. So it's only the contact details. So that'll be the owner, operator, project leader, or authorized person. And those would be the first few screens when the filing is initially created.
Great, thank you, Pam. Next, also from Anonymous, this may be related to a discussion later this week, but curious to know how municipalities will be involved in this process, I guess in the project area notice filing process.
So that's a good question. And I think it's from our understanding that it's possible that a municipality may be a project leader. So there may be the requirement for the municipality to create an account within the registry. So If it's one of the larger municipalities, I would recommend that you actually contact registry support so that we can sort of walk you through the process, because municipalities, like any business entity, will have a dedicated CRA number, but there may be large municipalities where there may be different departments who will be initiating filings for hundreds of projects that may not align with a different department. So please contact registry support and we'll be able to help you with the account creation process. But specifically, if you're required to do something as it relates to the regulation, that would be a question that should be addressed to the ministry.
Thank you. And next is from David. If a reuse site is accepting a total of less than 10,000 meters cubed, it is not required to be registered. If the soil from a project area is being sent to this reuse site, would they have to enter the reuse site details manually, as it would not already be registered and would not appear in the search?
Yes, so I think John walked through the process where there is the option to manually enter a reuse site. I will state that, and this will be shown in our next session, but there is, the registry is flexible in the sense that the regulation says that, you know, there is this exemption of 10,000 meters cubed for reuse notice filing, but if the entity wants to voluntarily register that reuse site, they can absolutely do that within the system. So it really is up to the owner or operator of that reuse site, whether they voluntarily want to do it. If they do not want to, there is that flexibility where the project leader or the authorized person within the project area notice filing can flag that a reuse site is being input manually into the system.
Okay, thank you. Next is from Ryan. When adding destination sites, does the program check / require that the quantities entered for each destination add up to the total amount of soil estimated to be generated that was previously entered for the project area? That's one part of the question. The second part is, does it check what the capacity of the destination site is? E.g., will it allow entering less than, greater than 10,000 meters cubed for the RDSD? What if multiple project areas have listed the same RDSD sending 10,000 meters cubed each?
So that's a good question. So there is no validation within the system of, so let's say multiple project areas are using an RDSD and the maximum is 10,000 meters cubed. There's no validation in the system that stops the user from saying, oh, this site has reached its capacity. So there is no flag within the system. So I think that answers the latter part of that question. Does it check what the capacity of the destination site is? Again, no validation within the system to verify that the maximum threshold has been accepted at that site. I think overall, the common theme is that there's no validation within the system.
Okay, next one's from Jeff. For multidisciplinary projects, what would be required under the project type prompt?
So I want to say that the project type is multi, I think this is one of the drop-down options. So you can select multiple, so let's say it's like a low-rise subdivision, but there's going to be some, this may not be 100% accurate, but there may be some green space. It could be like a community / recreational facility that's being built alongside the low-rise subdivision. You can select multiple project types. So I think I understood that question correctly. If I didn't, please put it back into the chatter and I will try to address it again.
Okay, I think this might have to be our last one, or maybe one but last. Let's see how long it takes to answer. What information can an operator or contractor update or add in the filing? If an operator or contractor updates information for filing, is a notification sent to the project leader and or authorized person?
So this question, I'm not 100% sure I understand it. So for a project area notice filing, the entity that has to initiate the filing is either the project leader or an authorized person. Whether that authorized person is an operator or a contractor, that may be the case. And if that is the case, then this authorized person can make updates within the system, depending on sort of what their role is. A notification is only sent within the system, again, if somebody has been provided notice access through that screen, which I think is the first step when you initiate a notice filing. Anything else would sort of be a business process that exists outside of the system. It would be up to each business entity to sort of have that dialogue as to what's happening within a specific notice filing if they haven't gone through the channels that exist within the registry.
Okay. Okay, I think we'll have to stop there for questions, unfortunately. So the rest of the questions that we haven't gotten to, there's about 30 of them, we will try to get back in writing to everyone. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we will send all the questions we received throughout the sessions we're hosting. We hosted last week and this week. The ones we couldn't answer live, we will send a document where we will answer them in writing, and we will email that to everybody who signed up for one of these sessions. So hopefully we can get your questions answered at that point. Before we wrap up, we would just like to get some quick feedback from you. So okay, never mind. Never mind. I was hoping we could launch the poll, but we don't have that on the system. So maybe we have time for one last question, Pam, just for 1 minute.
Sure.
If the soil is transported to a Class 2 local waste transfer facility prior to going to its final destination, Class 1 reuse site or landfill dump, how is this captured in the destination site requirements?
Prior going to its final destination site, I want to say that is more of a regulatory related question. I don't know the answer to that, so I think we'll loop back to see if this is a question that maybe the ministry can answer, or Wolfall can that person, if they want to identify, so that we can follow up with them, if that's possible.
Anonymous attendee, if you could maybe email us and to let us know who you were, so we can link your question to you and make sure that we can answer them for you. That would be really useful. So let's just go to the final slide, please, John, where we have the contract information. So yeah, all of the information, as Pam said, will be shared on our website on the Excess Soil Registry page, which is this link here. And if you have any questions, or if you would like to identify yourself, please email us at registry@rpra.ca to let us know. And we will try and support you as best as we can as we prepare to launch the registry. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Pam and John. Any last words?
No, we look forward to interacting with you officially tomorrow once the registry goes live. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.